Hello everyone. We are coming up on a year now since the Resident Evil 3 remake was released. So, what did everybody think? In my opinion, if you're looking at the Resident Evil 3 remake as a remake, you're probably going to be disappointed. If you're looking at it like an alternate version, it's a pretty sweet, pretty fun game. I actually thought it was very fun, very cinematic, kind of dramatic, action-packed, and there's no denying that Capcom's RE engine produces some of the most beautiful graphics out there. I'd even like to eventually see them make a full-fledged movie using the RE engine. One of my favorite things about the game were the atmospheric noises. When you're in quiet spots, you can hear the trees rustling, hear the wind, you can hear distant screams and gunshots. All that does a good job encompassing the beauty and chaos that is Resident Evil. And honestly, I don't even mind that they changed some of the characters' appearances. Which leads me to my favorite thing about the game. Believe it or not, my absolute favorite thing about this game was how they changed Jill's outfit. Now, as much as I love the original Resident Evil 3, my biggest pet peeve in any of these Resident Evil games are when things get ridiculously unrealistic. And I know I've said it before, but Jill's outfit in Resident Evil 3, the original, was the epitome of that. And it was the catalyst for all her other inappropriate outfits in future games. Now, from playing the original games and the remake of the first Resident Evil, you can tell Jill is a strong and intelligent and tactically trained female character. I really can't see her wearing something like that in an apocalyptic situation. And you know fine well the stars weren't in the middle of a prostitution sting during the Outbreak, so there's no excuse for it, except for some perv was just trying to smut it up. Now, there's not a lot I agree with when it comes to the changes from the original to the remake, but I do appreciate that one a lot. Now, with that being said, I can't help but feel like, much like the Nemesis himself, this game was a rush job put together very quickly for one reason. And that reason was to shut some people up. And those people are the fans that were demanding a Resident Evil 3 remake. Now, if you think about it, this game was released just a little over a year after the Resident Evil 2 remake. Capcom already had a lot of the elements that they needed for this remake, but once Resident Evil 3 was released, Capcom didn't do anything else with it. There weren't really any updates, there was next to nothing as far as DLC. Look how fast it goes by just playing it. The campaign is very short, and pretty easy overall. Even anyone new to the game can beat it in just a few hours. The events in the storyline, they're just boom 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 one after another, and just goes by very quickly all the way to the end. That's not to say it wasn't fun, because it was a very fun game. But unlike the original, there wasn't much to explore throughout Raccoon City, and there's only a few puzzles, which were kinda lame. All the iconic locations from the original game are just cameos in the background. Talking the Stagla Station, the Clock Tower, Dario's Warehouse, the Boutique. You either only see them in the distance or you're rushed through them. Some of them, like the cemetery, were even left out. The hospital's there, but it's completely changed. The RPD is there, but Capcom already had that one ready to go from Resident Evil 2. I think my overall least favorite thing about the game was the way they changed the way the Nemesis looks. And of course, the way Brad dies. Because in the original, you know Brad was there to kind of showcase why the Nemesis was there, why he was created, and what he can do. In the remake,
don't think about it.
That's what we get. That's what happens to Brad. That's just heartbreaking. And another thing, did anyone else see this cutscene after the credit and then think that there was going to be more, kind of like the epilogues in the original game? Because in the original, after you beat the game, you unlock a different epilogue for a different main character until you've unlocked them all. And that's kind of what I thought that this was going to be. Every time we beat the game, the remake, it would unlock a different part of this cutscene. I thought it was a cool idea until I kept playing and nothing. It's the same cutscene over and over again. Which nothing about that cutscene is explained, so I guess it's just up to your imagination. And I was thinking, why all these rushed changes? A while back I came across this article in Game Informer issue 324. I won't read the whole thing, but there's a few things I wanted to point out. It's an interview with some of Capcom's art directors and producers. Here again we have Peter Fabiano. If you don't know who Peter Fabiano is, he's one of Capcom's more recent producers. He was involved in Resident Evil 7. He was even in that one. Involved in the Resident Evil 2 and 3 remakes. And obviously involved in the upcoming Resident Evil Village, which I've already expressed my feelings about. And from what I read, he started with my overall least favorite Resident Evil game, the first Resident Evil Revelations. You know, in my opinion, Revelations had great potential because I'm down for any kind of viral outbreak on a ship on the ocean. But the ridiculous, over-the-top, cartoon-style characters wearing highly inappropriate clothing just killed it for me. And Revelations 2 was great, but all that's for another discussion. Now let me go through some of this article here. Now, one of the things the article talks about is why Raccoon City looks so different. It says Capcom went back to the archives to research the original design of Raccoon City, but the team found few concept pieces, which empowered the artists to dramatically redesign the city from the ground up. Big mistake. Now this is something that I don't understand, because why can't you look at the original game and just duplicate that with better graphics? The original Raccoon City is home where the old school fans' heart lives. It doesn't make sense that the team would have to rebuild it from the ground up and make it their own when they could look at the original game and just take what Raccoon City looked like from the original game, recreate it with greater detail. And Peter Fabiano talks about wanting to keep it fresh, but look at the huge success of the Resident Evil 1 remake. The fresh factor was how they brought the mansion to life and brought the forest to life. They brought the original environments to life with incredible realistic detail. They brought the characters more to life. They only changed a few things and added a few things. Little minor things that just made it better, but still kept what made the original so great. And the art director from Resident Evil 7, Yong-Hee Cho, he's the one that's recreating Raccoon City here. He says, so I wanted to make sure that this time you're able to walk through the city and look through the intricacies of different buildings. I wanted to make sure that we showed that this was a place people actually inhabited, that players could imagine people living in this area before the outbreak. I don't know about you guys, but it was already like that for me. In the original games, that's home. I always already imagined people living there and it being an actual city, like a good city. Frustrating. And they do talk about why they changed Jill's outfit and her being poorly dressed for a zombie outbreak, which I completely agree. And then they talk about why they changed Nemesis. Now, to me, redesigning Nemesis completely was another huge mistake. The original design for Nemesis was awesome. So why did Capcom change him so much? Even all his mutations throughout the game were changed dramatically. I feel like they could have kept his original design and just made it more detailed. Now in the article it says Capcom felt that it needed to spend extra time reworking the villain's design. Yong-Hee Cho is Capcom's art director and has been working on the series since the development of Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. When Cho started on Resident Evil 3, he knew he had his work cut out for him with Nemesis. Naturally, the art team started by going back to the original concept drawings from the 90s, but they struggled to adapt that design for the modern era. Give me a break! It just felt like more of the same, so we went back to the drawing board, Cho says. The first thing I saw was the clothing. It felt so strange to be creating a bioweapon and have it wear clothes. Okay, so then what do they call this? I know Resident Evil 3 was made by a different team than Resident Evil 2, but it's very inconsistent that the ultimate BOW, the Tyrant, is wearing a trench coat, boots, gloves, a belt, and they even put on a tiny little hat. But overall his look stayed true to the original. Now I understand them wanting to give him a nose and try to make him look more like he was just recently human, but then that is just totally contradicted by the piano teeth. But the Nemesis was always my favorite. What do you think about his change? And it wasn't just the Nemesis they changed. Ultimately they changed the appearance of all the creatures that they kept for the game. Other creatures from the original, like the Gravedigger and the Brainsuckers, were cut from the remake. So I mentioned earlier about the game's puzzles, but I wanted to touch on what the article says about it. These puzzles have always been a big part of the Resident Evil experience, but many of the original Resident Evil 3's puzzles were outright nonsensical. The nerve! asking players to slide giant boxes onto pressure plates or fiddle with cogs to adjust the water level in a fountain. For the remake, Capcom has redesigned all the puzzles to better fit the setting. Sadly, Capcom asked us not to describe any puzzles we encountered during our demos, but we can say that we enjoyed what we played and that the puzzles we encountered offer a nice change of pace from Resident Evil 3's action. We thought there were some unique puzzles in the original, but this time around, we wanted to make them more realistic and believable, says producer Peter Fabiano. We wanted to make them feel a little fresh, not entirely like they were. We have reimagined the puzzles. That was part of the goal, to look at the puzzles and bring in something fresh, so if people played the original, now they're coming back and it's not like you know how to solve the same problems. Trying to sugarcoat it. If you've played the game, you know there's not a lot to those puzzles. There's only a few. But if you get a chance to read the whole article, it's a good read. And on a lighter note, I am super excited about an upcoming game called Resident Evil During the Storm. I know this isn't an actual Capcom game, it's a fan-made mod for the PC version of Resident Evil 2, but this game looks absolutely incredible. If you look at it, this is Resident Evil Outbreak meets Resident Evil 2 and 3, and it's all in the style of the old games. This is absolutely a dream come true, and it's what the old school fans have been longing for. It takes us back home to Raccoon City. It stars RPD officer Kevin Ryman from the Outbreak games. There's appearances and cameos by Kendo, Marvin, Chief Irons, Brad, Jill, and even Elza Walker. Now, if you don't know Elza Walker, she's from the original concept of Resident Evil 2, the one that was canceled. They call it Resident Evil 1.5 now. But she was supposed to be Leon's partner instead of Claire originally. And I think it's cool that they brought her into this game, because I always thought that she would be like a cool addition to the remake of Resident Evil 2. But in the story of this game, you get to see downtown Raccoon City right before the outbreak. They've even added some places that weren't originally available in the old games, like a store and Kevin's apartment. They even cleaned up the streets to make it look like what it would have looked like before the outbreak. It's just absolutely awesome. And you get to play through the progression of the outbreak. And then the choices that you make will determine what happens afterwards, and there's just different outcomes depending on your choice. Now, there's a demo out, and the mod itself is only for PC, which sadly I won't be able to play it because I don't have a gaming PC. But I did watch it, and JJ at the Residents of Evil channel has a really good playthrough, and he plays through the different choices that you make, and he explains a lot more about it. It's just fun to watch. Definitely worth checking out if you love the old school games. I enjoyed watching the playthrough, and the team creating this mod are just doing an absolutely phenomenal job. I only wish Capcom would take a note. I know Capcom's moving forward with their progression in the series with all the modern technology they have, the graphics, and progressing in the storyline. But just something small like this, just every once in a while, even just once, for the sake of the old school fans, it would just be really nice. I think this mod is going to be a huge success. I can't wait until the whole thing is released and I'll just be able to watch it. I haven't been excited about a game like this in a long time. But let me know what you think. Thanks for watching.